All right, let's talk about Social Security. There's this huge wave of fear going around, and it's pushing a ton of people to claim their benefits the second they possibly can. But here's the big question. Is that a smart move to grab your cash before it's gone? Or is it a panic-fueled decision that could end up costing you an absolute fortune down the line? Let's dive in and figure it out.
So just how big is this wave of early claims? Well, according to a recent AARP report, we're talking about a 16% spike just this year. And this isn't some tiny blip on the radar, it's a major shift in how people are behaving. What's really wild is that it's happening across the board, even with people who definitely have the financial cushion to wait. So what in the world is going on?
Yep, you guessed it. It all comes down to fear. A fear that's being cranked up to 11 by a constant stream of scary headlines, just like this one. Almost half the people who filed early said they did it because they're genuinely worried the whole program is about to go broke. So they're choosing to lock in a permanently smaller check for the rest of their lives because they're afraid that if they wait, there'll be nothing left. And that is a monumental decision.
And you really need to let this sink in. Your claiming age is an irrevocable choice. It's a one-way street. Once you start taking those benefits, that's it. You can't go back and undo the permanent cut that comes with claiming early. And we're talking a serious cut, up to 30% less than if you'd waited for your full retirement age. Making a permanent, life-altering decision based on what might just be temporary panic, well, that can have consequences you'll feel for decades. So we have to ask, is this panic even justified?
Okay, so let's tackle this fear head on. It's time to separate the scary headlines from what the actual data tells us.
The number one fear is that the money will just disappear. But Social Security isn't like a personal savings account that can hit zero. You see, it's a pay-as-you-go system. It's funded by the taxes that today's workers are paying right now. Now, you hear a lot about the trust fund reserves running out around 2035, and that's true. But even if those reserves are completely depleted, the system will still be collecting trillions in taxes. And even in that worst-case scenario, the Social Security Administration itself projects it could still pay out about 83% of promised benefits. Not zero, 83%. This timeline here just lays it out perfectly. Right now, today, we're at 100%. That big scary date everyone talks about is 2035. But look closely. The number doesn't drop to zero. It drops to 83%. Now, is a 17% cut good news? Of course not. Nobody wants that. But it is a fundamentally different universe from a total collapse. And if you look way, way out to the end of the century, the system is still projected to pay out nearly 3/4 of its obligations. So this panic about benefits completely vanishing, it's just not based in reality. Okay, so if this system isn't collapsing, then delaying your claims seems like a total no-brainer, right? Well, not so fast, because delaying means giving up real money today, and that has a very real cost. It's called opportunity cost. This number can be a real gut punch. Let's just run a quick example. Let's say your reduced early benefit at age 62 would be $2,100 a month. If you decide to wait until your full retirement age of 67, that's 5 years, that's 60 months where you are not collecting a check. Do the math, that adds up to $126,000 in benefits you passed up. That's money you have to pull from your other retirement accounts to live on. It is a very, very real cost. And this, right here, this is the central question of this entire discussion. Is that bigger check you'll get later in life really worth giving up a huge chunk of money like $126,000 right now? To figure that out, we need to look at when and if you actually make that money back. So how do we even begin to analyze this trade-off between getting money now versus more money later? Well, the financial researcher Michael Kitces frames it beautifully, not as a math problem, but as a journey. A story that all revolves around one single concept, the break-even point. This slide breaks down that journey perfectly into 3 phases. In phase 1, you're underwater. That's that negative $126,000 we just talked about. You're basically in a financial hole compared to the person who claimed early. Then you hit phase 2, the break-even point. In this specific example, which assumes you delayed from 62 all the way to 70, that magic moment happens around age 84. That's the point where your bigger monthly checks have finally paid you back for all that money you gave up. And then comes phase 3, the payoff. After you break even, every single check you get puts you further and further ahead, and that gap just gets bigger and bigger. Here's another way to visualize the return on your decision to wait. You can see, for a long time, the return is deeply negative. Let's be blunt. If you were to pass away early, it was a bad financial bet. In this example, it takes a full 16 years just for the return to get back to zero. And it's not until around age 84 that the return on delaying finally starts to look like what you might have gotten from a standard investment portfolio. But after that point, look out. The return just keeps on climbing. And this brings us to what I think is the single most powerful idea in this entire explainer. What if we stop thinking about Social Security as just some government benefit check, and we start thinking about the active delaying as a strategic investment? In fact, it might just be one of the absolute best investments you can make for your retirement. Now, to really get this, we need to talk about a concept called longevity insurance. This isn't a product you go out and buy. It's a strategy. For so many of us, the biggest financial risk in retirement isn't dying too soon. It's living too long and running out of money. Longevity insurance is anything that protects you against that risk. And it turns out, delaying Social Security is one of the most powerful forms of longevity insurance there is. This quote from Michael Kitces is just mind-blowing. He found that for people who live to be 90, the decision to delay their Social Security has produced a 5% real rate of return. Real means that's the return after you subtract inflation. Getting a 5% return after inflation on an asset that is completely risk-free and backed by the U.S. government for the rest of your life, that is, and I'm not exaggerating, almost unheard of in the financial world. You just can't buy a product like that anywhere. Now, to really put that 5% real return into perspective, let's compare it to the stock market. Kitz has calculated that to get a similar risk-adjusted return, the stock market, which is, full of risk, would need to give you real after-inflation returns of 11 to 13% consistently for decades. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find any financial expert who thinks those kinds of returns are a realistic expectation. So here's the bottom line. Delaying Social Security isn't just another investment choice. It's totally unique. It's like a high-yield annuity backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. It automatically adjusts for inflation every single year, protecting your buying power for life. And because that payout is guaranteed, it's a powerful hedge against a volatile stock market. When your 401k takes a nosedive, that Social Security check is still there and it's still keeping up with inflation. And here is the ultimate stress test for this whole idea. What about the elephant in the room? What if that dreaded benefit cut we talked about actually happens? Well, the math shows that even if there's a hypothetical 30% cut across the board in 2035, the return on delaying still often beats the alternatives. Why? Because you're still getting a percentage of a much, much larger base benefit. And you still get all those unique insurance-like protections against inflation and market crashes. It's incredibly resilient. All right, so we've looked at the fear, we've looked at the facts, and we've looked at the incredible payoff of patience. Now let's bring it all home and help you figure out if delaying is the right choice for you. Look, this is not a one-size-fits-all decision, not at all. Claiming early can absolutely be the right move. If you genuinely need the income to pay your bills, or if you have serious health concerns and a shorter life expectancy, then taking it early makes sense. The key is that it has to be a conscious, informed trade-off, not a decision you make in a panic. But on the other hand, if your retirement plan can bridge that income gap for a few years and your single biggest fear is running out of money in your 90s, then delaying is one of the most powerful insurance policies you can buy. Ultimately, your entire decision might just boil down to this one question. What are you more worried about? Having enough income to get by in your 60s? Or having a guaranteed inflation-proof income stream if you live into your 90s? Your answer to that question will point you to the right strategy. This choice is permanent, so making it with a clear head, using logic instead of fear, is truly one of the most important financial decisions you will ever make. Thanks for tuning in.